My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
Jake Knapp is the inventor of the design sprint and the New York Times bestselling author of the book Sprint. He's also the co-founder of Character, a venture fund for early stage startups. How and why did you start using Miro?
I came from this position of thinking, I don't want to be doing stuff online, to thinking now when I do a sprint in person with a company, it's like, we're going to use Miro, even though we're all in the same room, because that's a better way for us to get this work done. As an investor, we're basically investing in their ability to solve problems. We're saying, we think this group of people is going to be able to solve a problem in a really great way and create value by doing it. And actually, you need to give people the tools that can help them make decisions, help them collaborate, help them visualize and see things in a different way. And Miro does all those things. So to me, at least as an investor, I'm thinking, give the team the tools that are going to help them think, that are going to make the most, brighten their skills as smart folks. And Miro is at the top of that list.
No brakes, no brakes, no fear, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Hello and welcome to what will be the final episode of No Brakes, No Fear for 2023 as we round up everything that happened at British Speedway's AGM at the time of recording this a week ago. And we've got a representative of both the Championship and the Premiership from the Board of Directors of the BSPL. I'm pleased to say that Chris Louis joins us, representing, of course, the Ipswich Witches in the Sports Insure Premiership, and from the Cab Direct Championship, Danny Ford, also, of course, of the Poole Pirates, discussing their respective leagues and the things that we can expect to see in 2024. All on the way on No Brakes, No Fear.
No Brakes, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
I'm Ian Brannan. Lots to discuss from the AGM in 2023 as preparations begin for 2024. We've got teams departing, teams coming into the top level of Speedway, and a change in how things look at the National Development League level. Youth development as a whole is a key topic, with all Premiership and Championship clubs signing up to do their bit to help the progression of young talent in British Speedway. Changes to points limits in both leagues, in the Premiership going up and in the Championship coming down slightly. And also we've got one or two other changes which will come into play when we get into the meetings. Change the way that the starts are done, the starting gates, and how the tapes are going to go up. Looking at the facilities, the 8-day rule, guests, particularly when it comes to the final parts of the various competitions, they're changing as well. Change to the transfer window, and there's some testimonials in there as well, which certainly will be something on the agenda for the Poole Pirates when we speak to Danny Ford in a little while. First of all, let's start by talking about the Sports Insure Premiership, and I'm very pleased to say that Chris Louis, one of the board directors of the BSPL, but also, of course, man at the top of the Ipswich Witches, joins us. And there was no secret made that this was a big AGM this year. Lots needed discussing, and it was a very big and busy 3 days for you all.
I think it's an important few days every year, to be honest. But it was obviously a sort of consolidating, in particular the Premiership, but both leagues really. Obviously, losing two clubs, as you alluded to, with Peterborough and Wolverhampton. The news coming mid-term last year for both clubs, and that rocked us really, to be honest. Peterborough had been sort of bubbling up underneath the surface for a while. They, Keith Chapman in particular, had obviously been battling very hard to keep Peterborough running. And in the end, obviously, the lure of development and things that's just happened in the past has been too strong. But both Wolverhampton and Peterborough are actively seeking land and stadia to be able to come back to British Speedway. And of course, we wish them the best of luck with that. And we will, as a board and as a sport, we will support them. And I'm sure they're getting a lot of support from their fans. The Wolverhampton one was an absolute shock, obviously to us, not least of all to Chris Van Stratton himself. It's a shame that we find ourselves in this position, but it was an AGM of consolidation and into the Premiership. Obviously, we welcome Birmingham and Oxford, and possibly more excitingly, we welcome Workington into the Championship, which for me is exciting. It's a new venue. It's something that the guys have worked particularly hard on to build the track, and it looks like a great track. And I'll certainly be making my first visit there this year to take in some Championship Speedway. So, that's great news. But it's been quite a bit of work.
Yeah, and on the subject of Workington, while we talk about these teams that are disappearing, but we've got these success stories as well, and showing that it can be done. And what a fantastic job the team there have done with Steve Lawson and Andrew Bain, and made this fantastic track. A track, incidentally, that is 1 metre wider than Bellevue because they can, and it's going to be a great races track. It's going to be fantastic to see how some of the riders who've never ridden it before go around there in the Championship, and I don't know, maybe some bigger events there through the course of the season as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've only heard good reports from people that have ridden it, and obviously Steve Lawson was the man sort of charged with building the track, and a lot of thought has obviously gone into it, and he's got a lot of experience of the new Bellevue, having worked very closely and continues to work closely with Dan Bewley. So, I think he knew before a shovel went into the ground exactly what he wanted to achieve, and it seems like he's been quite successful.
It is a tremendous venue, and I was there right at the end of the season for the National League Riders' Championship, and it is superb, and will get better over time as well. And a real races track, quite wide. It's actually 1 metre wider than Bellevue, just because they can, and they did. So there's plenty of room to race on it. It's going to be tremendous to see how some of these riders will get on there who've never been there before, of course, at Championship level, and maybe some bigger events, I'm not sure, through the course of the season too. On to the Premiership then, and we have, an old friend, I suppose, Oxford, back at the top level of Speedway, and they're operating 3 leagues, which has certainly raised one or two eyebrows. I suppose we can't knock a club for wanting to do more Speedway in an era where some are doing less.
100%. I've already sort of said publicly in my own piece on our own social media that it's disappointing that in one sense that we've got a club that kind of almost feels the need to run 2 professional teams. But as you just alluded to, the fact that they feel that they're in a position after a tremendous, comeback into the sport for Oxford, all the hard work that's gone into the stadium and getting the track right and running 2 successful Championship seasons and maintaining, very, very good crowds. Obviously, as a club and a business, they feel that they can withstand supporting 2 professional teams, and that in itself is such a massive positive for the sport. So look, it's exciting. Let's see how it goes for them, and I hope it does work out well for them.
Birmingham, another old friend, back at the top table of British Speedway. Of course, it's been discussed before, the race night really dictated to them, and Monday was their night to race, and so really it was a case of, it was the Premiership or bust really as far as Birmingham are concerned. For both Birmingham and Oxford, obviously this is going to be a different level of expenditure, and maybe one or two fans will have questions as to the assurances that these clubs can survive the season ahead. So when it's being discussed at the AGM, what checks are done to ensure that the clubs have the resources to be able to keep up at the top level of Speedway?
Look, there's no guarantees. There never is in business and particularly the business of sport. So, but of course, checks have been done. Lots of conversations and meetings have been had with both promotions in terms of the backing that they have for their clubs. And of course, the board have to be confident, as confident as they can be, that both will have the finances to see full seasons through. Obviously, from a business model point of view, the Oxford one is, as you said, unknown. Plenty of clubs have run, obviously, their professional team and their national development team, but nobody's tried to run two professional teams and, of course, a development team as well on top of that. So that one is very much an unknown. But lots of conversations have been had, lots of meetings have been had to assure the board that the finances are there and the business model's there, and all we can do is support that and wish them the best of luck.
As we touched on, there were a couple of bombshells last year. The clubs moving up are both tenants in Greyhound stadiums, and people will obviously draw comparisons. Obviously, the relationship, I think, with Oxford is much stronger than some clubs between the owners and the Speedway team. But are there assurances that we're not going to have any blindside curveballs this year with, these particular clubs or any clubs being turfed out of their stadiums without any notice?
Well, first of all, let's just sort of assure everyone that the clubs that have been lost, particularly this year in the case of Peterborough and Wolverhampton, neither have been the business models and the business of Speedway. They haven't failed. It's been landlords at stadiums, either in the case of Peterborough with development of the land or in Wolverhampton with the dog company. So the sport isn't failing in that respect. It is failing in security of its stadia. That's obviously an issue that we clearly have, and is clearly a problem for Birmingham going forward. They have a very good relationship with their landlords now. That's been sort of well spoken about and developed over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. And there's no guarantee of the longevity of Birmingham, but certainly in the case of Nigel Tully, he's an extremely positive and an enthusiastic man who wants to run Speedway and wants it to be in the Midlands. And maybe if there's a couple of years left at Birmingham, it gives him time to look at the possibility and feasibility of other venues.
The youth development has been a big theme from the AGM this year. All Premiership and Championship clubs signing up to a new 3-tier structure following those discussions there to, give more opportunities for the youngsters to get experience that they need and bike time and track time and so on to be able to develop. This is going to be different in different places, of course. Oxford, we've spoke about, are going to be running in the National League as such, as they have done the last few years. But with all Premiership and Championship clubs becoming involved, they have choices now on how they would look to run it. So is there a look at how you think this is going to look, say, for Premiership sides in terms of running more second halves and the tournaments they're going to be involved in? And I don't know, maybe you can give an example of how it's going to work for Ipswich.
Look, it's not rocket science, and the meat is obviously sort of being put on the bones now in terms of what it will look like and which clubs are going to take on sort of which role within it. But it's minimal at the moment, but it is a case of encouraging and actually sort of demanding that every club plays some part in giving track time to the youngsters at all the various different tracks rather than just National League circuits, as has been the sort of case for the last few years. So, it's a throwback to the second half days in some ways, because that is an option for clubs to run an amount of second half fixtures, whether that be challenge fixtures or obviously individual sort of racing. And there's also the individual National Development League sort of Grand Prix series that's going to be run throughout the year, which is right now sort of being looked at by various clubs. So hopefully that will be enough rounds to make it, up and down the country and very interesting for the lads. So look, it's sort of a start really. It's a small start to just giving track time to the youngsters that need it the most.
Another change this year is the removal of the restriction on the amount of Ekstraliga riders. Now, this can be for any nationality, but if they're riding for an Ekstraliga club, we can have any number of riders now in any team. Previously, it was a limit of 2. Talk to us about removing that restriction, the reason for doing it, but also people will be aware Poland have first call on a Thursday still if they have a rain-off on the weekend. So if Poland come in and want their riders, how's that going to work and what will be the situation there?
Yeah, predominantly that's why the restriction of no more than 2 Ekstraliga riders came in, was a sort of a small amount of protection with the agreement that we have with the PZM or the Ekstraliga. to allow them to run on Thursdays if they had to rearrange a fixture, and obviously, with more than two, it would have devastated some fixtures. But it was felt that we've got a better working relationship with the Ekstraliga and the PZM for first and second division in Poland than perhaps we previously had. There's a little bit more dialogue going on and discussion, trying to work together. So, it was felt that if we want to encourage the top stars back to our leagues, then we needed to take away, those restrictions. So, it is based on cooperation and dialogue with Poland, but I'm sure we can make it work. And if it means that, just one team fields an extra top world-class rider, then it's doing its job.
And so will there be guest facilities if Poland do pull that in and riders have to go to Poland on a Thursday night? You're a Thursday night track, you lose Jason Doyle and Emil Sayfutinov and maybe another one. And are there options for you to cover that?
There will be facilities. I mean, I'm biased. In my case, I don't think either of my riders can be replaced because I feel they're the top two in the country.
Right.
But there will be facilities in extreme cases, yeah.
Another change then that maybe comes our way from Poland and certainly the Grand Prix series, and so you've seen this in action, the electronic starts. Now this takes away the referee hitting the button on the tapes, in effect. The referee puts the green light on, and then the time between the green light going on and the tapes rising is randomised by a computer. And this is designed to make it truly random and that riders can't second guess what a referee is going to do. Can you explain how riders do second guess and work it out, and also how this system works from your experience? Yeah,
look, Phil obviously has a lot of experience with this, and I have an amount of experience because I'm kind of commentating over the races that they're involved in. And initially I kind of wondered if there was a good enough reason for it. Having seen it in practice, I believe it is absolutely the right way to go. Riders, it's instinct with riders. I would say probably 75-80% of certainly more than that, 99% of top line riders, as you will see in the Grand Prix, will try to learn a referee, and every referee is different. Some referees have an amount of sort of randomness to their starting anyway, in which case they're not really a problem. Some referees were easy to read. I mean, a rider doesn't make 4 or 5 starts in an evening. He makes 15 or 20 depending on the meeting. He watches every race and he reads the referee every single time. You can learn them, and then that leads to you kind of second guessing what they're doing, and then that's when you're trying to jump a start, and that's exactly what we're trying to eliminate. And after the initial period when riders have got to get used to the fact that they will be different and the referee's got nothing to do with it, and you can't read this machine that's just totally random, they will just get that out of their heads and then react to the tapes, as you're seeing in the Grand Prix now. I mean, it's very rare that we certainly don't see as many people trying to anticipate the start. So it's just going to speed up the meetings, and for me, it's a no-brainer, really.
And hopefully we'll therefore see less red lights going on straight away and all fall back and all that kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. If it saves time in that respect, it's a good thing. The fans want to see the racing, not the messing around and the waiting for a restart. So, and I'm confident it will. It has done in the Grand Prix. Statistically, you look at it, there are far fewer occasions of that happening now. So it will eventually have the same effect on league racing.
Another thing that Phil Morris mentioned, I think, right at the start of the season that he'd like to see was, again from the Grand Prix and Poland, the 2-minute countdown clock, and for riders to be at the tapes and over the handlebars ready to go in the 2 minutes rather than 2 minutes to get yourself on the track and work your way around. Was that discussed? Is that something that's likely to be coming in as well?
It has been discussed a lot, and it is an ongoing discussion, and it is hoped that every club, certainly in the Premiership, will be using the clocks, and they will be used in the same way that they are in Grand Prix and across the rest of Europe. So it is an ongoing discussion. It's not something I can confirm now, but it is something that we, as a league, we desperately want to do.
Okay, watch this space on that one. A couple of other changes then. 8-day rule. The 8-day rule for guests isn't going to apply in playoffs, meaning a club will be able to utilise the same guest were they to stage home playoff fixtures in successive weeks. And a rider can only guest for one team throughout playoffs or indeed cup semi-finals and finals as well. So maybe that rule's not going to go down well with Bomber. I'm not sure, but it is going to, I don't know, make it a bit more, I guess, easier to explain to new fans that if you need a guest, that guest can remain with that club rather than go and race for the opposition the next week.
Yeah, double-edged sword, that one. The 8-day rule for the season is there for good reason, to stop someone sort of almost becoming a permanent fixture in a team, because that clearly isn't right. I mean, unfortunately, we need the use of guests, but they need to be restricted in some way. So that remains for the season, but for the playoffs, obviously it's taken away because we only have such a limited number of teams to choose from. It's, in the case of seven teams in the league, it's 3 that you can choose from in the playoffs. It was a happy medium to do away with the 8-day rule, but of course ensure that a rider doesn't ride for 2 teams in the playoffs, because it's just fundamentally wrong, isn't it?
It can be difficult to explain, but I think that'll certainly make it a lot clearer. Something else that's been discussed in some other interviews I've done with both Hans Nielsen and Kelvin Tatum, as I hobnob with the stars, and now yourself as well, talking about safety of speedway bikes, and they can be quite volatile to ride, the modern engine. And Hans Nielsen has suggested that silencers could do with some modification, really, and that would improve things. And Kelvin Tatum, I spoke to him, and he tends to agree, and he's said that he's been working with yourself to look at ways of improving how speedway bikes handle by making some modifications to them. Just to talk about that, really, because I think it is an interesting area without necessarily losing power, but it's, Kelvin said, the right sort of power, and then maybe some ways to improve things.
It's something that more particularly myself and Kelvin, having travelled on the Grand Prix quite a bit, have spent many, probably far too many hours debating and boring people with. And we've had long discussions with Hans. I was with Hans in Germany, down in Pocking, for a celebration down there, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about it also. So, certainly between the 3 of us, there's a big will to look at making the bikes safer. At the moment, the characteristics of the bikes that has been brought on by the silencer change in 2010, I think it was. We've had a lot of discussion about it. It's something that wasn't specifically spoken about at this AGM, but ongoing talks started way before the AGM and continue. We do have permission in this country to do a meeting to help us develop a product and run a different silencer in particular. But it's not just silencers. We've looked at carburation on the bikes. We've looked at ignition systems on the bikes. We're looking at lots of things to try to bring back. It's just the rideability. And a lot of people that will watch Speedway won't really understand it unless you've ridden a bike. It's very difficult. And if you've come into Speedway in the last 10 years and you only know these silencers and these characteristics of the bike, even then as a rider, you wouldn't truly understand where we're coming from and what we're talking about. But we do feel that the bikes, you need to be able to shut them off. You need to be able to change direction. You need to be able to change your mind in the middle of a corner, which right now is very difficult to do. The minute you do it, the bike does something quite unpredictable. And we see it, we see it all of the time. And as ex-riders, we probably pick up on it much more than the average fan. To them, it's just a part of the entertainment. To us, it's safety, really. And I think if we got that right and we got the characteristics a little bit better, I think we would see better entertainment and, of course, increase the safety of the sport. So, look, it's something that we are speaking about. It's something that we are speaking about very much in this country. We want to lead the way in that, and that will get developed over this season.
I guess that you come from an era of Speedway where things did change, going from the uprights to the laydowns. Yourself, Hans Nielsen, Kelvin Tatum, you were all there when things changed. So you've got really an opinion of how a Speedway bike can ride and can feel versus what the guys now are experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go back that far, but I would understand. I mean, I started on uprights, obviously, and I think probably done my first 4 or 5 seasons pretty much predominantly on uprights. We don't need to go back that far. There's nothing wrong with the lay-down configuration in terms of how the bike handles. When we first had them, I mean, I went to the very first Grand Prix in Wrocław back in, you can probably help me with this, 95, I think it was.
95, the first GP.
Yeah, and we practiced. The Jawa company in Czechia had just sort of put together a factory team. So the first time they'd really done a team as such. Had myself, Mark, Tony, Hans, Lee Adams, I think, and we and Thomas Golub as well. And I practiced before that meeting in the official practice on my laydowns because Jawa had said, look, we want everybody to ride their laydowns. And my mechanics said to me, look, you've been riding well in England on your upright. You just need to do a few laps on that in the last session to convince yourself you're riding the right bike. So I said, yeah, fine. So we went out on the upright and I couldn't ride it. It didn't handle as well. It wasn't as nice to ride. So there's no issue with actual lay down bikes. It's just the engine development because of silencers predominantly that's come about in the last few years. So we get that right. I think we'll have a very good bike to ride.
Okay, interesting stuff. And for Ipswich then, your team building, well, I know it's complete, but you're announcing riders now, and already you've announced Jason Doyle and Keenan Rue back at Vauxhall. So starting strong with the Australian contingent then.
Yeah, for sure. Look, Richie went on record at the end of last season saying he wouldn't welcome sort of wholesale changes, didn't feel it was needed to the team. I agreed with him, and obviously Jason coming back, no brainer. He likes being at the club. He says fantastic things about the club, and that's very much appreciated because it doesn't always happen. A lot of work goes into running the club and keeping everything shipshape and the show on the road, and it's nice when it's appreciated. So, and he's a racer through and through. He's been a pleasure to deal with in every aspect over the last couple of years. And I enjoy watching him race, and our fans certainly enjoy watching him race. And why wouldn't you want a guy that's that committed to the sport, the racing, the club, in your side of the pits? It makes a massive difference. So no brainer for me to have Jason back on board. And Keenan, look, he's had his year of learning what British Speedway is about. I think it opened his eyes up. I don't think it was quite what he expected, maybe at times, but he stuck with it. And the second year will be a different ball game for him. And we certainly didn't want him, to come here for 1 year and then drop him. So no, in our view, it was always important to bring Keenan back.
And Keenan Rue, overall had a good season. Certainly on the world stage, came frustratingly close to winning a medal and indeed winning a world title under 21 level with SGP2.
Yeah, I mean, look, he raced at the top level for the under 21s, obviously in the SGP2, and as frustrating as it would be for him to sort of hear again because he knows it, but he basically was one mistake away from a chance of winning the title because Matthias Schiernack had obviously not had the meeting that he wanted in Voyens, and he really was that close to becoming the champion. So to end up actually dipping out altogether on a medal was obviously frustrating for him, but it shows what he's got, and it's there, and it's easier for him to find on the continental tracks, which is where he's grown up and learned. Obviously in Australia, they're much bigger, wide open spaces, and then he's raced in his experiences in Denmark and of course in Poland. So England was always going to be tough for him, but the way he stuck to it, the way he's learned, and we're just looking forward to faster progression in the second year.
All right. The question they're all asking, though, Chris, that everybody, I think, in British Speedway is asking, but particularly the Ipswich fans, is Emil Sayfutinov back? Rider of the year.
If I told you that, I'd have to shoot you. So I just don't want to have to do that. But
I'd rather you didn't.
But the whole team will be announced in each day. Will be announcing one rider for the next 5 days. So all will be revealed very soon.
Okay, you won't have long to wait there. Make of that what you will. Thanks a lot, Chris, for joining us. Always a pleasure, and have a nice winter. And, well, before you know it, we'll be back in action once again. Those air fences will be getting pumped up, and hopefully the sun will be shining in March and April and thereon.
Well, a glorious summer would be great after the struggles of trials and tribulations of the weather last year. It was a nightmare pretty much from start to finish. So, yeah, a nice hot, dry summer, some decent speedway, and, I'm looking forward to it.
It did seem, I think, for many clubs this year more than the previous season that we're looking at weather radar more often than not and keeping an eye out for dark clouds. I remember driving to Ipswich thinking this isn't going to be on, and it was on. Some great work done there, but better weather would be good.
Yeah, it was a lot of hard work. Track staff always work hard at Ipswich, and I think we worked out there was only 4 or 5 fixtures that weren't affected by either the weather or the weather forecast. So, I would very much relish having a less stressful season of looking at weather forecasts.
Here's to that. Well, look, thanks a lot, Chris, for joining us. Have a good winter, and see you in 2024. Thanks a lot.
Nice to talk. Thanks, Ian.
Chris Louis, Board Director of the BSPL and also, of course, promoter at the Ipswich Witches. Now we turn our attention in the next part of No Breaks, No Fear to the Cab Direct Championship. Poole Pirates promoter Danny Ford joins us, himself also one of the board directors at the BSPL, to shine a light on how things are going to look in the championship and the reasons for the various decisions being made, including a lowering of the points limit and, again, a greater emphasis on youth development. All that on the way in the next part of No Breaks, No Fear.
No Breaks, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome to this section of No Breaks, No Fear, where the emphasis is on the championship level of Speedway, and we're joined by Danny Ford, promoter of the Poole Pirates, and of course a board director at the BSPL as well. As far as the championship goes, one of the big things is the lowering of the points limit. We'll talk about that soon, and that points limit is for the full 7 riders. Knockout Cup BSN series remain, and we have the same amount of teams, with Workington moving into the championship to effectively take the place of Birmingham. Oxford, of course, will be operating at all levels, so they've got the cheaters will remain at championship level. So it's going to be Berwick, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Oxford, Plymouth, Poole, Redcar, Scunthorpe and Workington. And Danny, let's start by talking about the lowering of the points limit. That's been one of the key changes which has affected many sides, including the Poole Pirates, where you've had to make some adjustments and had to part company with 1 or 2 riders that have been with you for a little while now. So talk to us about that lowering of the points limit and what that is going to mean now for the league in terms of how it's going to look.
I'll be honest, 38 points wasn't my preference. It certainly wasn't. At Poole, we always strive, build to a higher points limit and get as close to that points limit as we can. From a selfish point of view, we'd prefer the higher points limit, but 38 is the right number. If not, it could have even been slightly lower. There's been a few heat leaders who have said they're not going to ride in the championship. Obviously, we know the situation with a few others who won't be able to ride in the championship for other reasons. You have to bring the points limit down slightly to balance things out and almost share those top riders out. I don't think if it was 42, 40, I don't think every team would be able to build to that. And I think you'd have a massive gap between the guys at the top, the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom. So while from a selfish point of view, we'd prefer something higher, in reality, when it came down to it, for the goodness of the league, it was better to have it lower. Obviously it means making sacrifices. We have to make sacrifices in our team building, but in the interests of the strength of the league, we want it as competitive as possible. We want every team to be competitive, particularly in their home meetings. We don't want it, because ultimately if you've got a massively uneven league, that can cost the good teams a lot of money. They're paying their riders per point, and if you've got a particularly weak team coming up against a strong one, that's not good for anyone's business. So hopefully 38 gives that good balance.
You've said that from a selfish point of view, you'd probably like a few more points to play with. What was the strength of feeling in order to bring the points limit down then? Because obviously that's what's happened. It must have been a strong case for doing that. And what was the vote split, if you can share that?
I'd say it was probably 90% in favour of the lower points limit. So, well, maybe 80% if you want to look at it like that. But I think, obviously I've got to have two hats on, which is always difficult, looking at things as a board member and someone who, represents the league, as well as someone who has to represent my own club and, do what I think's best for my club and my supporters. So it is difficult. I think overall it's something we have to swallow and accept. For the majority of the league, that it was the number, and that's what we got, and we fully accept that, and you won't see us moaning about it.
You mentioned there that now the lower points limit is going to spread around those top guys a bit more that are left, because, as you say, not every rider was going to line up in the championship anyway. There were some moving on. But also this now is going to open up more opportunities for some of these younger guys, the guys that maybe at the top end of the National Development League but couldn't quite nail a place in the championship. These opportunities now are going to come the way of some of these riders, and new opportunities for them to make their debuts at the championship level, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. You're certainly going to see probably a bit of an influx of those top-end National League riders, probably the guys 7+ averages coming through, whereas if it was a higher points limit, 40, 42, I don't think, there's obviously be the one or two coming through, but I think we'll see a real influx of them coming through, the talented young guys, which is always a promise. And it now kind of bridges that step from National League to Championship has been a huge step. I think making Championship slightly weaker kind of bridges that gap and makes it a little bit more achievable for those young guys coming through, as well as it distances the Championship from the Premiership a little bit more, which I think was a important goal, because going back a few seasons, the Championship and the Premiership were probably too close in strength. We're seeing that gap grow, particularly last year. There was a definitive gap, and I think it's going to continue growing, which is good. So, overall, I think we're hopefully, obviously it's hard to judge it at the start of the season, but the changes and the points limits that have been set across the leagues kind of gives a clear pathway through and progression.
And otherwise, the format of the championship is fairly similar, isn't it? It's still a knockout cup. BSN series is back. I guess as far as the structure goes, the big change will be, well, it's not a big change. It's kind of going back to how it was in some respects. But the playoffs is now a straight top four, same as in the Premiership.
Yeah, I think we were all happy with the amount of fixtures that we had. Obviously, it depends a lot on progression, how many you're going to have. You could probably end up having as few as 11, but vastly more than that if you progress in all the competitions. Poole were victims last year of the playoff system. We found ourselves waiting a little bit for the other group stage to be completed, which is frustrating. Frustrating for ourselves, our supporters, and our riders. They're chomping at the bit and want to get riding. I think going back to the just top four in a 19 league, it makes sense from a statistics point of view, and that those teams have clearly earned it, rather than a team squeezing into sixth and being in the bottom half of the table, being able to make it to the playoffs isn't. I can understand why that doesn't seem particularly warranted or earned. So I think that's was a good move, and it's going to be it's going to make making the playoffs even more difficult for everyone. But I'm sure we'll have some good fights.
As we've already covered earlier in the podcast, that youth development is one of the key themes of this AGM, and one of the big changes that we'll see are potentially, second halves and more of those kind of meetings. Every club is going to have to do their bit in that regard through the course of the season, or indeed put a team in for the NDL. What way do you see Poole going with that, and how do you think that's going to look for the Championship?
So effectively, there's 3 options for clubs to run. We have to be realistic. Running National League for a lot of clubs, including my own, isn't viable. But I appreciate we have to do more for the youth development. A lot of clubs haven't been pulling their weight in that regard, and Poole's one of them. And that's I see the criticism that Poole gets for not doing our bit. National League just wasn't achievable for us, but the other 2 options are to run second halves. So half a dozen to 8 heats at the end of 4 to 6 meetings, I think we're talking about. So, which obviously gives added value to our public on those occasions, which is always good. Brings on that youth. Obviously down in Poole, there's not many opportunities, or down in the south, to be honest, there's not too many opportunities to ride Speedway. So hopefully that opens up the doors a little bit more, and gets us a few more local lads coming through. We're not expecting them to jump straight into Championship. Obviously, you got to work your way to it. Or the third option, staging a kind of Grand Prix format event for the youngsters, which again is a very attractive thing. It's a potential one-off event where you can see some of the best up and coming youngsters. So I think it's really encouraging to see that everyone will be doing their part. As I said, Poole and a few other clubs, we aren't able to run nationally. It's just not something that is financially viable for us, and would put a massive strain on the club. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, and we know that there is a shortage of riders out there, so we have to be making every effort to bring that next generation through, and hopefully this is the first step of that.
A couple of other rules that are changing for 2024, and these are rules that possibly, Poole were without doubt sort of held back a little bit by the rules as they were, and of course these are changing. And I'm talking about guests, where previously it was only your top 3. Now you can have it for your top 5, a guest if one of them's out, and also that rule for the playoffs and the final stages of major tournaments, where if you do have a guest, you've got to stick with the same one throughout that now. So that 8-day rule is going to be relaxed, certainly in the playoffs when they come round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both the changes that you've talked about they seem common sense, but there have been reasons they've been brought in place. But I think now the benefits outweigh the drawbacks of them. The being able to have a guest for any of your top 5 would have certainly helped us out at the end of last season when we lost Anders. And it's tough on teams, especially when you're going into the business end of the season, not having one of your team, because if that rider could be irreplaceable. And I'm not saying we'd have won it last year. By no means am I saying that. Anything could have happened, but at least it gives you an option rather than just the rider replacement. So that's a positive. And the other rule, being able to only guess for one team in the playoffs, that seems for the best interest of the sport. And we don't want it to look like a rider's helping a team to make it to the playoff final 1 week and then knocking them out or beating them in the final. It's not an ideal situation. But hopefully this kind of alleviates that problem.
A few testimonials announced, Charles Wright and Kyle Howarth, but for you, I think could be a busy time for testimonials at Wimborne Road, because you've got Richard Lawson's still to have, which has been held over from this year, and also in line for one now is Kyle Newman as well, who of course is departing the Poole Pirates, but you'll be having that at Wimborne Road, will you? Yeah,
we'll be having 2 testimonials this season at Wimborne Road. We'll be looking to do Kyle's early on, and then Richard's just probably towards the end of summer. we've never shied away from doing testimonials. I feel that, when a rider has been a great servant to British Speedway, both these guys have, that they fully deserve it. Carl's got a great history with the club over many years, and he is a Poole lad, obviously through and through. And it's unfortunate that we weren't able to fit him in our team plans for 2024. But there's no animosity I know, but obviously it's a difficult conversation to have. But then there's no hard feelings between us, and hopefully that shows that by the fact that we'll be hosting his testimonial. It's a great thing to do, and likewise for Richard Lawson. He's been fantastic for us for the past 3 seasons. Got a really good rapport with the Poole supporters now, so we'll do everything we can to support them in building up their testimonial and getting that sorted. So it's kind of the least we can do in that respects to guys who are great servants, not just to Poole but all of British Speedway.
And broadly looking across British Speedway and from your point of view, looking up to the Premiership and seeing some of the riders who have already signed, and there's various rumours of who's going to sign for who, or riders who are interested in also coming back now. We are seeing quite an influx of top quality talent to British Speedway once again. We could be having 6 or 7 Grand Prix riders racing in the top league, which is exciting stuff. Do you look at that now with obviously great satisfaction, but any sort of second thoughts and wishing that Poole were back at the top level as well to welcome some of those?
Yeah, I've seen plenty of Poole fans commenting saying, God, we'd love to be going back up to the Premiership, because you're looking at that calibre of riders coming back across, the GP boys coming back in, and you look at that team that Sheffield's built, and you think, wow, that's that is quite impressive with 2 former world champions in there, as well as Jack, who's probably one of the top guys in the world. It is exciting, and it's a shame we can't be part of it, but we have to look after the future of the club, and at the minute, Premiership just simply does not make sense for all. I'm not saying that, come a year or two, if situations change, that it doesn't become viable and we can't look to move back up. But as it stands, my dad and I, we have discussions at length, and we feel, and based on all the data we have, that Championship works for Poole. But it is truly going to be a really exciting season in the Premiership. I'm kind of excited for Oxford to be joining, because I'll certainly be making the trip up there. A little bit closer than some of the others. So with when Ipswich and whoever it is, Sheffield, etc., all coming to town, I'll be making that trip up to Oxford to see those guys, because it's great to have them back in British Speedway, and it's looking good.
And you look at the Premiership, and there are quite a few riders that have had time with Poole at some point or another, aren't they? So maybe there will be not just yourself heading up from the south coast to see what Oxford are doing at the top league.
Exactly. I think Oxford will probably be having a bit of a field day when some of those Poole guys are. Former Poole guys are there, whether it's riding for the Oxford Premiership team or against or visiting Oxford. So it's a great opportunity to see some former Poole legends, and I'm sure there's a few more surprises to be had.
And no doubt the Poole Pirates fans listening to this will be thinking, well, we're going to get more news of the team fairly soon. Of course, you've made that one announcement already, but what's the sort of timeline for unveiling the Pirates class of 24?
We've announced Ben Cook as our first signing for 2024. He takes on the role of club captain. I think it goes without saying, Ben is one of the most exciting riders in the Championship, and he's Poole through and through now, and this will be his 4th season with us. We've seen him grow from a reserve to a second string heat leader. Now he's club captain, and that's a story that everyone can get behind. So we're having to make some changes. There's been some really hard and I guess gut wrenching decisions that we've had to make. My dad and I. It's not nice. When you have to tell a rider that they're not on your plans for a season, it really isn't. And we have a job to do. Poole supporters, demand success, and that's what we try and bring. We want to bring silverware. We lost 2 trophies at the end of last year. We want to win them back, to be honest. It's not a taste we're used to too often down at Poole, and it's certainly one we don't want to get used to, because that's why we've made the decisions we have. I'm happy with the way team is going to shape up. We're looking to have all of our team announced before the new year, so there's a lot to be excited about, and I feel that Poole supporters will be happy with what we've got, and hopefully it's a team we can get behind, and a team that can certainly challenge for silver.
Poole have got a history, through your dad, through Midlow, and I guess in modern times with the likes of Ben and Zach, yourself, of finding this talent at the other side of the world, bringing them over here, and they've flourished at Poole. Of course, Poole have obviously been in higher leagues over the years as well. But Ben Cook, along with his brother Zach, the latest perhaps off that production line.
No one had heard of Ben Cook in 2020, and we got an email from him saying, I've been in the UK, I'm available for next season. Do our due diligence. We speak to our connections over there in Australia, and we took on him. And you never know what you're going to get from one of these young Aussies. That season we had 2 come in, and one was a success and one wasn't. So you take the punt. It's a bit of a gamble, but we've stuck with Ben, and the risk has certainly been rewarded. And he's one of those riders who is progressing at such a rate. Really, he probably shouldn't be in the championship in the next year or 2. He's a great rider. He has got the perfect frame and build to be looking abroad. So I'm sure if he has a strong season with those and whoever he finishes up with in the top league, he's going to those opportunities are going to fall in his lap.
And for Midlow, and I guess also for your dad, since they've been in charge of the club now over the years, I think on 29 trophies over that era, falling just short of the magical 30, of course, but something you're looking to rectify next year.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how many Midlow and my dad are on, to be honest. It's quite a few. I know they want to make it its number, so and I think 30 is the next goal. So listen, we're under no illusions. Glasgow and Scunthorpe are going to win and retain their titles, and then there's 6 other teams who are going to be tough to beat, and lower points limit means a real shake-up, and it's going to be tough to call. And I think last season we had probably 5 teams who were strong, and then 4 who were tailing off. This season we're going to see a much closer league, which is good for us, good for the supporters, not so good for them Poole, I guess, but good for the supporters, and it will make things certainly interesting.
And one final question, if I can be so bold, can we address the Jubilee League situation? Came very, very close to getting that completed this year, but of course hasn't happened again. Is that now going to just be, called a draw and we move on now, or what's the situation there?
I can't say for definite you're going to be seeing it. To be honest, nothing has been finalised on it yet. I think the majority realise that doing it now it wouldn't be the best look. Even doing it at the end of last season wasn't ideal, and we were just determined to get it done. But circumstances beat us on that occasion once again, and it's not an ideal situation, and I can't give you an answer that everyone's going to be happy with. But that's where we are.
I suppose as well, the reality of it is that it's not a case of just getting 2 teams together, the 2 existing teams together, because they're in separate leagues now since they ended up in the final of this tournament, that they've moved on in very different directions now, and it's requires a bit of work on both sides to adjust the teams to balance things out as well, doesn't it? So it's not a straight matchup that you can run on any night, really.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to be taking on Leicester's team for this coming season with our team. That you might see a bit of a mismatch there, to be honest. In fact, Stuart Dixon at the AGM did say to me that they're getting a trophy made as joint winners of the Jubilee finals, and I said to him, "Well, you can't be doing that." But I think he was deadly serious. So it's I'll be glad to see the back of it.
It's a case of best laid plans, isn't it? But I suppose during the course of the Jubilee League era, we've had 2 monarchs, so therefore maybe it's fair to have 2 winners.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Let's just call it there and draw a line under it.
Okay, let's move on to 2024 then. The season will be here before we know it, though, Danny. And sounds like things are going to get moving pretty rapid at the once we get into March. Maybe starting slightly sooner than people might be anticipating.
Yeah, I think particularly because of Oxford, they're going to have to get it moving really sharpish, probably a week or so earlier than what we've had previously. So we've got our testimonial to do, and then we'll be looking to kick off around Good Friday with our official fixtures. So I'm looking forward to it now. I just hate this time of the year. It's people think we're just sat here twiddling our thumbs, but in fact it's probably one of the busiest times for a speedway promoter. Obviously, once you've got the team sorted, then you're trying to sort race suits and merchandise and get all sponsorship and all of that. So it's one of the busiest times for a speedway promoter, and I don't think that gets appreciated too much. Everyone just thinks we turn up on race nights and things just work like clockwork. I wish that were the case, but unfortunately a lot goes into the background, and a lot of those foundations are set this time of the year. I'm hoping to get all my stuff sorted before Christmas, and then I can take a little bit of a break between Christmas and New Year before we get started up again. February, we'll be back down the stadium, getting everything ready, getting the air fences out, and before you know it, we'll be all guns blazing and going again.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Danny, and talking about the championship and also the Pirates as well, and looking forward to seeing the rest of the team announcements soon.
Thank you very much. Good to speak to you.
My thanks to Danny Ford of the Poole Pirates and, of course, Board Director of the BSPL, and earlier on, Chris Louis as well, for explaining things from the championship point of view. Keep up to date with everything happening across British Speedway, all the team announcements as and when they are revealed, and there's going to be quite a few of them, I think, between now and the end of the year. You'll find them all on the official channels of course, the clubs, but of course British Speedway's website as well, britishspeedway.co.uk, and on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Get all the news there. Keep up to date with everything happening through the course of the closed season, and then there'll be plenty of action once we get going again. Before you know it, it'll be March, and there'll be much more to talk about, but we'll keep you up to date as and when there's anything to share here on No Breaks, No Fear. A couple of other things that you can follow over the course of the closed season if you want some Speedway podcast action. My other podcast, Humans of Speedway, is in full flow, and we've already got episodes with Alan Rossiter and Ben Cook on there. And still to come in the next few weeks, there will be podcasts with Craig Ackroyd, who's the top referee, both in British Speedway and, of course, the Grand Prix Series, and Hans Nielsen is going to be on as well. So there's something for the cold winter nights. Kelvin Tatum also has his own podcast, again with me. Sorry about that. But that's called Tatum Talks. So search for that on the usual podcast channels. So you've got Kelvin Tatum's personal thoughts on how things are looking for 2024 as well. Keep up to date with that, which will update through the course of the winter as well. And if we don't speak before, have a fabulous festive time and enjoy Christmas. Maybe Santa will bring you a season ticket or something like that. I don't know. And then before we know it, it'll be 2024 into the new year. Have a great time until we speak again. And thanks for listening this year and supporting British Speedway. Take care.
No Breaks, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Sports Social Podcast Network.